smaller the class size, the more individual attention each person gets, right?
Yay.
All right, what are we studying this week?
Stewardship of time.
Stewardship of time. What does stewardship mean, Alicia?
Like helping.
A little bit more to it than that. It's taking care of something, but what's special about that something?
Someone else's.
Right, it's something that someone else's essentially, right? It's it's taking care of something that someone has entrusted you with. Why is our body technically does our body technically fall under the realm of stewardship?
Because it's God's creation.
Okay, so God gave us our bodies and entrusted it to us for a short time period while we're alive. So technically, while we think that our bodies are our own, and whenever you read the scriptures, we find that they're actually God's, and we're just entrusted with them for a short time period. Same thing goes for money, for the lives that we live in general. We only have them because God entrusted them to us, and if we are being Christians the way that we should, then our lives are going to be lived with stewardship in the forefront of our thoughts, because we're taking care of stuff for God as we go. Everything is ultimately not ours, it's God. The world we live in was created by God. We're just taking care of the land while we have it. If someone goes out and buys the Louisiana Purchase, I can't remember how many acres they bought, millions and millions of acres of land. What's going to happen whenever America is taken over by another country or disintegrates and splits and turns into multiple countries? What's going to happen to that land? It's going to change hands. You know, people that have possession of the land that they have now buy, and people are going to buy it and sell it. Land's going to fall out of the hands of families that have owned it for generations. Stuff happens where the land is not owned by the same people, because ultimately you just have it for the time period that you have it, if that makes sense. Whenever you buy something, you're only going to own it for your life. And then if you get lucky, you get to pass it on to your kids or someone that you love, or give it to the church or something whenever you die, whatever happens. It doesn't stay with you forever because you're only here for a short time. Now, whenever we look at the realm of time, this is the circle of time. This is like a pie. This is not going to be a pricky pie chart. What are some things that soak up time in our lives?
Sleep.
All right, sleep. Not as much as it should sometimes. School. School soaks up, what, 7 hours a day? 8 if you figure in bus rides.
14 if you're a college student.
14 if you're a college student. You get breaks in between, though. All right, what else?
Well, for older people, work.
All right, work. I'll put that right there by school, because those two inevitably, for a college student, tend to go together. You have to do both, and then you work even more once you get out of school. Family. What else?
Are we talking about like other people, or are we talking about us?
Well, us specifically, and other people in general.
I was gonna say like church and stuff.
All right. Let's that as worship, class. What else? This is like a tiny piece, by the way. You average it out, you're averaging less than 30 minutes a day for worship in a week.
Studying.
Studying.
Even though I don't really do that. Your significant other or spouse.
All right, we're going to loop that in with family. Family can, the slice of family in the pie is always varying, depending on the day, the week, the year, and the family. And you. What else?
Eating.
All right, eating. Takes up more time than I cared for it to sometimes. What else? You guys can't tell me these are the only things that ever take up time.
like relaxing and stuff.
Alright?
Your phone.
When's the last time you just sat down in a chair and was like, oh, this is great? You sat there for like an hour doing nothing.
I've done that before.
You guys are killing me. That never happens in my life. Alright, you said your phone. What on your phone?
Like,
Facebook.
Alright, social media. You know what? We're going to dedicate a big old chunk to that. Because that's what inevitably ends up happening is it eats up too much time. What else?
Schoolwork, YouTube, English, class settings, media. Friends. I don't know. I guess you could lose that out of school, but.
Yeah. Not in the real world. Let's get out of school. Not that school's not the real world, but you know what I mean. Your friends don't inevitably don't always be in the same environment as you all the time, so you have to chalk out some time for them sometimes.
that's what I do
Every day, there is nothing else you ever do.
Not usually.
I don't know. That looks like it's it.
That's it. Man, you guys are bad at this. All right.
What else are you thinking of?
What about entertainment?
Okay, Netflix. Yeah, that happens.
All right. Netflix happens. You guys never watch Netflix. In your
Oh
entire
yeah, I
life.
like Netflix.
No, I watch.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, we never do anything except these things except watch Netflix.
I thought that was like that's what initially.
No, we're talking about real life, not just ideally what we're doing. We're talking about what actually happens in real life. So entertainment slips in there, right? You go to the movies,
Video games.
video
You
games.
watch YouTube for hours.
You watch YouTube. YouTube has a lot of entertaining stuff on it, doesn't it? Alright, so you have something that soaks up a lot of time there with entertainment a lot of times. I did not really give that a big enough chunk out of the pie because we are an entertainment driven society. If you sit down and you don't do anything, what do you say? Like if your parents just put you in a chair, no TV, no phone, and just said sit here for an hour, what would you do after about the first 45 seconds?
Sleep.
No, you're not asleep. You're awake. You're too awake to sleep.
Watch phone usually.
You can't use your phone.
Okay.
What would you say if you didn't have your phone, didn't have a TV, there was no one there entertaining me to talk to?
I don't know.
Huh?
I say I'm bored.
There we go. You would say if I didn't have my phone to pacify me, if I didn't have a TV in front of me, if I didn't have a radio going, if I didn't have somebody to talk to, you would say those 7 little letters, I'm bored. I'm bored. And we are more bored today than anyone has ever been at any point in history because we are so used to being pacified with something to fill the time up.
When I say that, my dad just makes me go do something like work or different.
If our girls say it, we threaten to make them go clean the toilet. That's just an old family thing. If you say I'm bored, you have to go clean the toilet. So if you have entertainment slipped in here, that really takes up more time than we actually give it credit for, if we think about it. Because if you're sitting around at home, you inevitably are scrolling through social media, which is also over here. I'm going to lump these two together because it's a form of entertainment essentially. You're scrolling through social media, you're watching Netflix, you're watching YouTube, you have music going in the background, you have something going on to keep you going because you have to have something stimulating you. You have to have something going on or else you feel bored. You feel like it's a waste of time. So this soaks up spare minutes of every single day without us even realizing it. Now, tell you guys a little story. So one day, sometime back, we were doing a Bible class. I was teaching a Bible class with kids your age, and I said, "Hey, did you study what you were supposed to study this week?" "Nope." "Why?" "Didn't have time. I was too busy." Now this is in between services. Yeah, guy's sitting there. I said, "You didn't have time?" "Nope." Playing a game, right? Playing a game while he said he didn't have any time to study through the week. And that happens without us even thinking about it. We have time for what we make a point to carve time out for. Right? If you look at all this stuff, and there's even more stuff we could pack into this ridiculous pie chart. There's even more stuff we could slip in there. What did no one do? Sports. There we go. For people Alicia's age, sports soaks up an incredible amount of time. And still, whenever you hit college age, and even my age, if you allow it, sports will soak up a lot of time. If you start playing competitive softball, if you're playing intramural softball, or whatever.
CrossFit or weightlifting.
Yeah, whatever people your age do now for sports stuff. Or if you let sports enter into the inner, it soaks up even more time. Because if you're really into college football or baseball or the NBA or the NFL, you will carve time out for that and dedicate hours in your week to that. So we have all these things soaking up time, and what inevitably falls by the wayside?
Worship and studying.
All right, a lot of things do. A lot of things do.
Sometimes sleep.
Sometimes school, right? Because you should be studying, and instead you're over here watching Netflix. We should really get entertainment and social media like that big of a chunk of the pie, and just take that out and move these all down here. Because it soaks up so much time in our lives. This is in
Sorry, what's that one at the top?
social media.
Okay.
Instagramming, Twitcher,
Twitcher.
and the Facebooks. So you've got entertainment and social media soaking up almost every spare minute of your life if you aren't watching it. So what inevitably falls by the wayside is school. I was going to tell an unrelated story, but let's just forget that. School. About sleep. You ever lose sleep because of these things?
Me.
No,
No?
I stayed up
I
until.
sleep so much.
You have never stayed up late watching Netflix when you should have been asleep.
Oh, well, no, like I have, but like I always like sleep during the day. So it's like, no.
That's when you're supposed to be at school. Alright,
I stayed up until 1 a.m. to finish a report.
that you should have already done because you were
I
watching
should have
Netflix.
already done.
What about family? Right?
Yeah.
Family ever fall by the wayside? How hard is it to carve out time for friends?
That's pretty hard.
It
Especially
can
when you
be
can't drive.
really hard.
I want to see my friends.
Between work and school.
Right. Those two soak up a lot of time. Throw a family into the mix and it gets even harder. Right? Because you guys don't have kids.
No.
Someday, if you guys are blessed, you'll have kids. And you know what kids do? They soak up a lot of time. Which is great. Kids are beautiful. Kids are amazing. Everybody should have kids that can. But they soak up a lot of time. So you throw this hectic organizational chart of your time, just take a wrench and throw it into the entire thing. Because if a guy that I used to, was in an office, I did an internship, and he said, whenever you have kids, and this was profound and I didn't even realize it at the time, he said, when you have kids, nothing is simple anymore. If you want to just go out right now and get some McDonald's for dinner, you just go out and you get some McDonald's for dinner. But when you have kids, you have to make sure you have the diaper bag ready, because if they have a blowout diaper, you've got to change it wherever you're at. You've got to get them dressed. You have to get them around. You have to get them loaded in your car seat. You have to get the car seat in the car. Shoes disappear. Like, we have shoe thieves, shoe elves that take all the shoes in our house. You have all these things that soak up time, and all of a sudden a 5-minute trip becomes a 30 to 45-minute endeavor. Try getting 3 kids around for worship on top of dragging yourself around in the morning when you're not a morning person, trying to get your family to church on time, and it's hard. Family soaks up a lot of time, friends soak up a lot of time. You throw kids into this mix. I'm going to go ahead and throw a side shoot of kids, because they take a special amount of time compared to everything else in your family. So you have all these things. You got to carve out some time to eat, and then what ends up happening whenever you have 30 seconds or 5 minutes or 15 minutes.
You sit there and get in the social media.
All right? Whenever you finally drag yourself away from social media, what finally happens?
If you're an exhausted parent, you sleep.
Right? Whenever you guilt trip yourself into doing what you should have done already, before you go to sleep, what do? You finally get yourself around to study. Right? This sliver is actually entirely too big for studying. I'm going to redo this sliver, making this one unfortunate. I'll lock this thing's anyway. You get like a tiny sliver. This one is still too big, really, but I can draw a thinner sliver. I'm not going to redo it. Studying takes up a tiny amount of time. If you're super lucky, you squeeze some in. And if we look at, let's just take Jesus for example. Let's go to one of the Gospels. Somebody pick a Gospel.
No, say John.
All right, you want to go to John. John's a good one. I'm glad you picked John. Go to the book of John.
Some guy on the phone recommended that one to me. You should look through John, and I was like, okay.
All right, somebody pick a chapter in John.
Right after he told me a dirty joke, kind of undermined his message. But
It did. All right. Somebody pick a verse in John.
8.
8. Go ahead and read 8 for us.
For the poor you always have with you, but you do not always have them.
All right, who's talking here?
Jesus.
Jesus is talking. Who's Jesus talking to?
Judas,
what chapter's that?
12. Looks like he's talking to Judas.
Right, he's talking to Judas. The other apostles are there. Mary and Lazarus are there. Excuse me. I think we can infer that Martha's here too. I missed her name, but Martha's there too. So people that are close to Jesus, what's Jesus doing? In a general sense.
Teaching.
He's teaching, right? He's teaching. If you take any portion of the Gospels and you just read through it, pick a random spot, random verse, random chapter, look at it, Jesus is utilizing time in a way that everybody should be able to emulate. Right? What did Jesus never do whenever he should have been teaching?
He never wasted time.
He didn't waste time. He didn't waste time. Whenever we look up here, what do we find that we can classify as wasted time?
Social media entertainment.
All right. I'm not going to throw them out completely because is there a place for entertainment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there can be a good a time whenever it's completely fine to go out and entertain yourself, spend time with your family, go watch a movie, go do something that's exciting. There can be a time and a place for social media. The church has a Facebook page. There's good things. There's Christian written articles you can read. You can educate yourself while being on social media. You can keep up with friends and all that. So I'm not going to throw that out completely. But let's pick a really conservative number and say 85% of these two things are entirely wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
Entirely. Right? If you watch the whole series of Friends for the 3rd time, right? Are you really utilizing time in a great way at that point?
Did you know that the names of the characters spell out Friends?
No. You know who could probably
What
care
does it?
less? Me.
Yeah. I don't watch that show. I just saw that on Instagram.
I think that's fake.
It doesn't spell out friends.
No, that's what it said. I don't know.
Don't believe everything you see on Facebook and social media.
I blame the
know.
Russians for that misinformation.
First thing.
But no, if we're going to be really conservative, we should probably bump that number up in all reality.
Yeah.
But we can almost guarantee that 85% of our time spent doing entertainment and social media is completely wasted.
Mm-hmm.
What's the unique thing about time? Well, there's a couple of unique things about time. Let's look at that quick.
It's limited.
It's limited, right? You only have a certain amount. What do we know about that amount? Let me rephrase that. What do we not know about that amount?
How much there is
Right, we don't know how much time we have, right? I could have a heart attack and die right now, and that would be all the time that I had. We could get hit going home from services this afternoon and die in the car crash. We could just keel over dead because someone decided they wanted to shoot us and take our wallet. We don't know how much time we have. And inevitably, you never have as much as you think you're going to. Right? You can ask anybody about the time that they have had, and they always will, or not always, generalizing, they usually will say, I don't know what happened to all of it. I always thought I was going to have more. You know, everybody wishes there was extra hours in the day, and there never is. What does that do to time?
It makes it valuable.
Very, very valuable, because we are never going to get it back once it's been spent, right? If we were able to go back and get time and reuse it, that would be a different matter altogether. If we could go back and take some of the hours and hours and hours and hundreds and thousands of hours we've spent scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and reuse that, that would be an entirely different matter. But since we can't, it makes the time that we have precious. But we tend to treat it flippantly because we don't view it that way. Real quick, let's run back to Matthew 23 and look at the parable of the stewards one more time. It's 25. I think it's in 23 every single time. Matthew 25, starting in verse 14. For it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. I want you guys to take a second and burn that sentence into your mind, because that is what we should all be shooting for as Christians to hear whenever the resurrection happens. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. The master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed, which is not true. Always mark that in your mind. That is not a true statement. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Notice that's in question form. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. All right. What is unique about the time that is presented to us in this parable?
Oh, and this one it's talents, which, just looking at it, it's a form of money. And the time that is presented to us are the talents.
It can be a form of the talent, because it's something that's valuable that's entrusted to us. You're right.
They're all different.
Right? They're all different. But looking at it in a more face value sense, we see time utilized here by the servants, along with the talent in this parable. Look at the first one. He who had received the 5 talents went at once. He didn't dilly-dally. He wasn't messing around. He wasn't wasting time. He went at once and traded with them and made 5 talents more. If you look again at the 2-talent guy, so also he who had the 2 talents. He went at once. He did it when he was supposed to right off the bat. But look at the guy with the 1 talent. He went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Alright, so we have this little timeline. Alright, here they get the money. 5-talent guy and the 2-talent guy both go right away. Alright, so they're trading right off the bat. 1-talent dude. Just make his last name. He, same time period. Put him over here. Same time period, buries it. Right? And then over here, we have the master's return. Not the monster, the master's. Alright, master's return. So we have this time period right here that's being used in 2 different ways. The ones that went immediately and traded were utilizing this entire period of time. The guy that buried it did what with that entire period of time? He wasted it. He wasted it. And once that time period was gone, could he go back and reutilize it? No, it was gone forever. So I want us to look at this in the sense of our lives and look at it from a spiritual sense. There are people that utilize their lives and the time that they have in a physical sense and do very well for themselves here in this life, right? There's not anything inherently wrong with that, but if you don't utilize your time spiritually, then at the end of that person's life, from a spiritual standpoint, you look at that life and you say they wasted it. 30, 50, 80, 100 years down the toilet. Gone. Never to get utilized again. They're never going to get another opportunity. It was entirely wasted. And I am currently 30, and I can look back at my life and kick myself, if I could go back in time and just kick myself in the tail end and tell me to get it in gear. Because if I would have utilized the time that I had up to the point where I started dedicating myself to studying the way that I should have more, I would be light years ahead from where I actually am right now. Whenever I see something that I don't know that I should, or I forget something, or I don't have something memorized that I should at this point, it's my fault for wasting bukus of time up to this point. And that's a shame, and each of us is going to know that in a way that no one else can. You guys can't look at me and say, man, Andrew just wasted thousands of hours of his life so far. He should be way further than he is in his studies. But I can look back in my own life and see that and know it in a way that no one else can. So the only one that can really self-police, I already just kind of gave that away, the only one that can really police how you use your time is yourself. Because if you're living at home, your parents are going to have a say in how that goes. If you are a student in high school or college, you already have time carved out unless you make drastic changes to your life that probably aren't necessary. You have a limited amount of wiggle room in how you use your time. But No one else can look at your life and say, this is how you should be using your time the way that you can. Because you know how many hours you spend doing this when you shouldn't, right? You know how many hours you've done this. Just watching something that is doing nothing but burning time. Nothing inherently wrong with those things, except whenever it becomes a time hog. Whenever it starts carving out a third to a fifth of your time that you have, or even a third to a fifth of the time that you have available whenever you take out work, family, school, and all those things, then it starts to become a stumbling block and an issue. We have, and I'm not talking about Highlandville in general, I'm talking about the church in general, we have more access to more knowledge than anyone has ever had at this point in human history. We can know things that no one else could know. If you want to study about, I'm going to pick something out of the Old Testament, something remote. All right, if you want to know about Abraham, you can get on the Google and you can learn about the land of Uz, where he came from. You can learn about some of the kings that he interacted with. You can pull up things that scholars 100 years ago, or no, let's go back to that, 500 years ago, if they wanted to know the same questions or the answers to the same questions that you had, they would have to send letters out, which were very expensive, to find somebody with those resources, or ride a horse to the nearest library, and then chances were the library didn't have the stuff to have that answer. So they would have to make a long journey to get to somewhere that had the answers that they wanted and find that same answer. They had to invest an incredible amount of time and effort, and we can pull it up in like 30 seconds if we're being slow. We have all that in front of us. But whenever you look at the church in general, just spread out across the world, if you look at the average member, not the exceptions to the rule, not the people that dedicate their entire lives to study, but the average member, a lot of them know less than the average member from 20 years ago, or 40, or 50 years ago. And the reason is because we just don't carve out any time down here for studying. Now, this is not a study on studying. This is a study on stewarding our time. I'm just using studying as the example of how we mismanage our time, how we tend to let our time go by the wayside. So if we look at our lives from a spiritual sense, when did these guys know the master was going to come back? Like, they don't know. All right, they know it's somewhere down the line. I just put him right here on this timeline. They just know it's coming. What do we know is going to happen? All right, Jesus will come back, or
We'll run out of time.
we're going to die. All right, either we're going to die, and then Jesus will come back at some point down the road, or Jesus will come back before we die. Those are the two options on the table. But at some point, the time we have in this life is going to pass. It's going to be gone, never to be gotten again. Right? So if we know that, we can look at these guys and how they went out right off the bat and did what they were supposed to do as a motivation to manage our time in a more productive way. I'm not saying that you have to read your Bible every split second of every minute of every hour of every day that is not soaked up by school or family or work. It should soak up some time, and you should dedicate a certain amount of time to it, not just use it as a filler whenever you actually have a chance to sit down and your mind is where you can focus on it. But you need to be utilizing it in a productive way, right? Instead of mindlessly scrolling, instead of just looking at pictures of people that you don't even like, going to places you've never been and never care to go to, instead of looking at all that stuff, utilize it in a productive way. And it's going to be hard because years ago, give you a for instance, not years ago. Why did I say years ago? When was that? about a year ago. About a year ago, I made the decision to not be on Facebook anymore. Still have a profile up there. I will get on there if I need to do something for the church every once in a very blue moon. But I'm not on there. Moved my app off the homepage of my screen. And for the first week, even past the first week, every once in a while, you know what I would find myself doing?
Going to go find it.
No, not going to go find it. Although that does happen to people. It didn't happen to me, but apparently it does happen to people. I would, Anna's not here to borrow her phone. I would go and I would hit that blank spot. Left it blank. And eventually I moved something else into that slot. But I would hit that and be like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I was going to it. It was just a reflex to go to that spot and hit it at a point in the day, whenever I was on a break at work, whenever I was at home, I would hit that blank spot with my thumb and be like, wow, I didn't even realize I was doing that. Just out of reflex, that's what happened. Fast forward, I moved something else into that slot. Every once in a while, I would go to something on accident, what I put in that slot, just out of reflex from going to that spot. And I found that whenever I got off of Facebook, which was my only real form of social media, because it wasn't on the Twitter, the Instagramming, I was a lot happier. I was just a happier person in general. Right? Because I didn't resent people getting more attention than me for doing similar things. I didn't see people doing things that they should not have been doing, which was a huge discouragement. I didn't see Christians acting in an unchristian way, which was discouraging. I didn't have too many articles to read that I didn't really care to read, but I read out of reflex because that was starting to happen with subjects. Reading on stuff to be reading it, not because I was actually interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
All those things, all those problems disappeared. And I'm a lot happier for it. And whenever I see people in person, I have things to interact with them about because I don't know all of their business already, which is all right. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have realized, but there's a barrier in the church that has happened without us even knowing it, because we know things about people, interacting with them through social media in ways that have not been around before. There's been barriers put up because whenever you spend time with somebody face to face, what do you have to talk about? You saw what I put on Facebook, right? Yeah, you did. You did, because you liked it. I see that now. And if you watch conversations happen between people now, a lot of times that's what it breaks down to. A lot of times it will break down to, oh, hey, we did this on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Yeah, did you see this? Hey, did you see this cool thing that was on social media? It breaks down to what's happening on social media instead of what's happening in each other's lives. And that is a real shame because it takes the interaction that Christians have had since the beginning of the church and it really dissolves it and replaces it with something else. Which is not how it is. If you go back and you look in Acts and the epistles in the New Testament, what you have are Christians interacting with other Christians, encouraging one another, interacting in their lives. And whenever we mismanage our time, we really do away with that. So, I wish I had something specific to give you guys, like do a daily Bible reading or do something else that will help you manage your time better. But the truth is, our lives are constantly evolving. They're constantly shifting. If Jacob is in school now and juggling work and a relationship and God, 5 years from now it's not going to be the same. Either school's changed or work has changed or the relationship has changed, or other things have happened that will constantly change in your life. If you get thrown into the mix, it throws a wrench in everything, figuratively, and now everything has constantly changed. If you throw grandkids into the mix down the road, everything has changed. So there's not a set pattern you can go to that's going to fix time management in your life. What it takes is a dedication to God in the forefront of your mind to utilize time in a productive way. We don't throw entertainment out, we don't throw social media out completely, but we do put them in their place as a priority number 10, or wherever you want to put it on the list, that's way down below the actually important things in your life. And if you do that, you will find that you utilize your time more productively, you're a better Christian because of it, and you don't have to worry about being the dude that wasted the time before the master came back. And then you will hear that phrase that I want you guys to remember, well done, good and faithful servant. Because the good and faithful servants did not waste their time. They were good stewards of not only the money entrusted to them, but the time that the master entrusted to them before his return. So I want us to think about that in our lives as we continue on from here. Any questions? All right. Next week we're going to study the uniqueness of the church. The uniqueness of the church. So I want you guys to find passages about the church and study them. Ephesians is a good book to start.